I don't know if you guys know, but currently there are violent riots going on in France in response to the fatal shooting of a teenager who tried evading the police. Let's see what's going on because it's getting crazy out there.
Well, in France, people are rallying for a third day over the fatal police shooting of a teenager. You are seeing his mother right there leading a tribute march. A short while ago, the boy, identified by authorities only as Nahel M, is reported to be of North African descent. The shooting happened during a traffic stop on Tuesday in Nanterre, a working-class town on the outskirts of Paris. French officials say the officer who shot and killed the 17-year-old acted, quote, illegally. We're now learning that the officer has been put under formal investigation for voluntary homicide. Well, protesters have set fire to several cars in Nanterre. French President Emmanuel Macron calling the shooting unjustifiable while also condemning the unrest. Our Paris correspondent Melissa Bell has more.
Cars, town halls, schools set on fire across France as rage over the police shooting of 17-year-old Naël continued into a second night. Enough to force the French president to call an emergency ministerial meeting.
Now, this guy, Emmanuel Macron, in case you guys didn't know, the French president, this guy was literally at an Elton John concert while this entire thing was taking place. This guy is at an Elton John concert. You cannot make this up in any way, shape, or form. If you're the leader of a nation like France, and there are riots going on reminiscent of the BLM riots going on in your country, where buildings, schools, all sorts of property is on fire, cars are blowing up, and you're at an Elton John concert, I would respect it a lot more if this dude put on some gear, a vest, some body armor, grabbed a rifle, and a water hose or something, and went outside and did his job. Something that is resemblant of a leader, something that resembles a leader. You're at an Elton John concert. It reminds me of when Ted Cruz was on the way to Cancun, when the people of Texas were going out sad as a result of natural disasters. He decides in his mind, well, I'm going to Cancun. It's like, bro, you're a leader, an elected one. You didn't just put yourself in, you're not a dictator. These people put you in there. You're a representative of the state. It's a total shit show, but I want you guys to see the video of the actual incident where the teenager was shot.
Ils ont tiré, wesh. C'est fini pour lui. Je sais pas qu'est-ce qu'il a fait.
Now, here's what I think about the shooting, right? They're saying this. The prosecution version is that according to the public prosecutor of Nanterre, two Paris police prefecture motorcycle officers noticed a Mercedes-Benz A-Class AMG with a Polish license plate driving at high speed in a bus lane, driven by a young-looking person at around 7:55 a.m. The officers activated their warning signals, audible and visual, and indicated to the driver of the car, then stationary at a traffic red light, to stop. The vehicle proceeded to start moving and ran the red light. The officers followed the car and alerted their superiors via radio. The car committed multiple traffic violations, endangering a pedestrian and a cyclist. Due to traffic congestion, the vehicle eventually was forced to stop. The police officers got off their motorcycles, pointed their guns at the driver, and ordered him to turn off the engine. Instead, the vehicle started to pull away, and one of the police officers fired a shot at the driver. The vehicle continued its route before crashing into street furniture at 8:19 a.m. The rear passenger was arrested when he exited the vehicle. The front right passenger fled. The police officer who fired the shot provided first aid to the driver. The driver was pronounced dead at 9:15 a.m. Now, the police version challenged by a video. According to the police, an officer fired his weapon as the young driver was about to run him over. Now, we know that's not true, because if we go back to the video, we can clearly see the officer leaning on the vehicle. He's not in danger of being ran over, but he is in danger of being pushed off the vehicle. This guy was not in danger of being ran over. However, I will say this. The fact that this teen decided to drive off on the police as they held him up like that tells me that they probably weren't lying about the fact that he ran red lights and refused to stop when the police told him to. So we don't really know who is entirely telling the truth. Now, this entire situation is a shit show. From the president of France not being present when this stuff is going on and, partying at Elton John concerts, to the police shooting dudes who are driving away, the entire situation is a total shit show. However, here's what I think. I think that from what we can currently see right now, the shooting was unjust. It was unjust. I don't believe you should be shot and killed for driving off from the police. However, some might make a case against it, saying, look, now, however, I will say this. If this guy was constantly driving away, endangering bikers and all sorts of other pedestrians, as they said in that Wikipedia article, that this guy was endangering citizens trying to run away from the cops, then he drives off a second time, at some point, lethal force should be used to neutralize the target if they are endangering the lives of other citizens because they refuse to stop for a simple traffic stop. If the police are telling the truth about that because they lied about almost getting run over, but if they are telling the truth about this guy putting everyone's lives at risk trying to drive away from the police, which might be true given the fact that we just saw him try to drive away, then I think that the shooting was justified. And I think that these protests are just unbelievably ridiculous. The rioting, the looting that's taking place, it's just ridiculous. We can clearly see all sorts of chaotic rioting and looting happening in France, exploded vehicles, people running off with, the typical shit. People running off with groceries, people running off with luxury items. It's just ridiculous. Y'all are destroying your community over what? This has nothing to do with this young man's death. And yet you're destroying your own cities, your own communities. If these communities are as downtrodden as people say, which I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that, you know what, maybe they are. Why destroy it even further by blowing shit up in response to a police shooting? Furthermore, this is not America. This is France. It's not like police shootings happen how often in France? That's probably the first and maybe the last in the entire country this year, maybe. Police shootings are not a commonplace thing in France, and yet we see the explosions, the burning vehicles, the theft, the looting. It makes absolutely zero sense. And people will sit there and say, oh, well, property isn't as important as human life. But I would argue this. Property is the cornerstone of civilization, whether it's private property or public property. Hospitals, restaurants, pharmacies, grocery stores, car dealerships, all of these pieces of property make up a functioning city. Everyone needs all of these goods at all times. They need it at all times. People need groceries. People need their medicine. Some people are going to go out and buy a car. They need to go from one place to the next. They need to go get a job. Some people are going to be going out to buy a car. Some people are going to need their car that you just blew up. The idea that destroying your community benefits you in any way, shape, or form is delusional. Delusional. And we're seeing it happening right now. And France is a consistent victim of this nonsense, this ridiculousness, where communities that are moving into these European nations oftentimes subject some of these nations to unbelievable levels of violence. And yet these countries in response are just absolutely timid and weak. France has been the victim of how many terrorist attacks? France has been the victim of how many just violent attacks from communities of people that have immigrated there. At what point is France going to put their foot down and do something and say something? At what point? How many times does France have to be the victim of some stupid shit? A kid got shot by the police. That's horrible. But there are ways to go about it other than blowing up your own city, your own town. What do you gain from that? What do you benefit from that? How are you in any way, shape, or form fixing the problem? You're only making it worse for yourself and other people in your community. And France, just the attitude that France has toward this stuff, it's just ridiculous. You got a migrant over there stabbing little kids at a playground. There were no riots and mass lootings about that. We got a migrant running around stabbing up children at a playground. At some point, France is going to have to figure out what they're doing. Because this is just ridiculous. This is embarrassing. For a nation to subject itself to this kind of shit is just absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. These communities in France are subjecting the nation to unbelievable levels of violence over and over and over and over and over again. It's almost like France is stuck in 2015, 2016. It's like they can't escape. Every other European country seems to have been able to recover from the terror attacks that were just plaguing Europe, and the mass grapes and the mass SAs and the mass assaults. It just seems like France is just stuck and can't get out. So ultimately, the situation looks like both the police, the young man in the car, and the citizens are all handling it in the absolute worst way possible, which is how a lot of these police interactions go. The police F up, the citizen Fs up, and then the citizenry who reacts to the entire incident also F up. This young man, if he was truly evading the police and putting everyone's lives at risk, I believe at some point lethal force would be permissible. I believe so. But if this young man at some point be permissible, I do believe that. Now, if this young man didn't flee the police, if they simply pulled him over and then he took off, I don't believe that they should have just killed him. But if he'd already shown himself to be capable of endangering the lives of innocent civilians walking around, riding around, driving around just so he can get away, and the police stopped him and he tried it again, at some point lethal force has to be exercised to protect the citizenry. So ultimately, total shit show in France. The president is over there partying when his nation is in disarray and chaos. It's been in chaos for quite some time, especially with the riots from before, with the whole pension stuff. At some point, France is going to have to realize that, inviting people into their nation that have literally no care or concern for the customs and values of the country, at some point, like, the chickens are going to come home to roost. At some point, France is going to have to suffer some serious damage from not realizing you cannot just bring people over who have no interest in assimilating. Here in America, Muslims come over all the time and they assimilate. It's just fine. We don't have this issue. But in France, it's clearly different. In France and in the rest of Europe, since 2015, 2016, it's been very clear that they're having an assimilation problem. They're clearly having an assimilation problem. I don't see how anyone can sit there and look at France and say that the racism and the hatred is so rampant there that there needs to be all this rioting and looting and destruction. I'm sorry, it's just not real. It's just not true. It's absolutely not true. So at the end of the day, France is gonna have to figure this out, because you're inviting mass numbers of people to your country that don't respect the culture, the traditions, the customs, the laws, anything in France. And at the slightest provocation will destroy you. I don't know how many times France has to experience this before they wake up and smell the coffee. But hey, maybe it'll take forever. Maybe they'll never wake up. It is what it is. But that's my opinion. That's my take. The police effed up clearly. Clearly they effed up because they lied in the video. And if they were telling the truth about this young man dashing and dodging them, then I think they were absolutely justified in shooting this young man to stop him from endangering more people's lives. We're going to have to see how it all unfolds. Hopefully this young man's death was not unjust. Hopefully they did not murder this young man. But this violent looting and robbing and killing and blowing things up, it's absolutely disgusting. It's stupid. It accomplishes nothing. And hopefully at some point France learns from it. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out.